Hello there, students, and welcome back to our discussion on Industrial Revolution. In the previous session, we have discussed the entire background of Industrial Revolution. We have seen how the transition took place. We have understood why textile industry was so important, and we also went into why this revolution took place in England first. Now, in this session, we are going to first see how industrial revolution spread to other parts of the world. When industrial revolution was taking place in Britain, other European countries were soon startled. They realized that the developments that are taking place in Britain, they are going to enable it to rise above all the other European powers very soon. They realized that if they did not catch up with this technological change that Britain had brought about, then they will never be able to compete for hegemony in continental Europe, and Britain will continue to, dominate the colonial world as such. And because of this reason, we see that there were some concerted efforts, first by Western European countries and then by, others, to emulate what Britain had done. Initially, Britain tried to keep all of these things secret. It did not allow, the machines to be exported. It did not allow people who had the know-how to go and set up factories in other countries. But how long could it hold back? And ultimately, the developments that had taken place in Britain were slowly spread to other parts of Europe and then to other countries also. Now, the first in this, context were what are called as the low countries. Who are the low countries? Low countries are Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Now, these countries are called as low countries. इसलिए नहीं कि वो गिरे हुए हैं. They're called as low countries because, as compared to the sea level, their altitude is very low. That's why they're called as low. In fact, the word nether in Netherlands is basically in their local Dutch language, it basically means low. So low lying land. In fact, Amsterdam is slightly, like a cup shape below the sea level. Okay, so it's an engineering marvel how they have kept the sea water out. Because of climate change and rising sea levels, a lot of these areas are threatened. So these countries, they were one of the first countries to actually get a whiff of what Britain was doing, and they started to implement those things also. Why is it that they are first? Reason क्या है? देखिए, they are closest in that sense to Britain, along with France, of course, and therefore they had a much better, you could say, view, so to speak, regarding what was happening there. That gave them an advantage. Second was availability of raw material. The reserves of coal and iron, like what Britain had, similarly these countries also had. So that is why, secondly, this also gave them a big boost. Thirdly, the involvement of state, like in case of Britain, here the states in these countries also took proactive role, and that is why you will see that a lot of these developments were fast track, especially with regards to railways and with regards to steel industry. They were one of the first, after Britain, in Europe, they were in a way the pioneers as regards to the railways. And consequently, we'll see that low countries, from 1820s, 30s, they will start to rapidly industrialize as such. Okay. After that came the case of France. Now, in case of France, although Britain and France were arch rivals, they were fighting everywhere in the colonial world. But still, France was a country made from a different, cloth, so to speak. Okay? The nature of France was very different. The state was based on absolute monarchy. The systems in France were, more corrupt. They were more feudal, so to speak. Because of that, France took a long time to actually catch up. When France went through the revolution from 1789 onwards, and when Napoleon came to power particularly, they realized that they need to catch up with Britain. Napoleon had this great ambition of suppressing Britain, but he was not successful in that. In fact, Napoleon did not even dare to cross the English Channel and go and fight the English on their own soil. One reason behind that was that he knew that they have a very strong navy and they have a very robust economy. So Napoleon decided that he needs to industrialize France as quickly as possible. So he did start to take some steps towards the latter part of his reign. But since he did not rule that long, that was it did not create much big an impact. But subsequently, under rulers like Louis Philippe and Napoleon III, who was the nephew of the original Napoleon, the more famous Napoleon, Louis Philippe and Napoleon III, during their reign, this is in mid 19th century, during this period, France started to rapidly industrialize, and they followed the same model that Britain had done. So laying out of infrastructure, development of banking system, exploitation of natural resources, technical training, all that we discussed regarding Britain, that was implemented in France. And 1870 आते आते फ्रांस जो है वो एक respectable industrialized status तक पहुंच जाता है, and then it will advance subsequent to that. So France little late, but nevertheless it catches up. Germany का case थोड़ा, Germany and Italy, both of them, their cases are slightly different. Germany and Italy, we're going to see in a subsequent discussion later in detail, they were not united till 1870. So Germany earlier was divided into several hundred smaller, you can say, kingdoms and principalities. Together they formed one nation only in 1870. Both Germany and Italy, दोनों का unification 1870 में ही हुआ. Germany की case में it was led by a state called as Prussia, and Italy की case में it was led by Sardinia, Piedmont. These were two leading powers, respectively, in German states and Italian-speaking states. So Prussia itself was fairly industrialized, advanced, और प्रशिया की लीडरशिप में ये जो जर्मन स्टेट्स थे 39 उस वक्त तक रह गए थे, ये सारे जो है वो एक साथ में आते हैं, and they form a economic union called as Zollverein, and that gave a big boost to industrialization in German states. और 1870 में unification के बाद तो Germany really surged ahead. They put all their effort in becoming the numero uno power in Europe, and rapid transformation took place in Germany. In industries like steel, chemical, cement, Germany in fact came very close to surpassing Britain also. और ये एक बड़ी वजह बनेगी, Britain was in a way kind of envious that Germany is going to overtake it as the number one industrial power in Europe and in the whole world, of course, and therefore it became a major, you can say, defining factor as we go towards World War I. So Germany का transformation जो है वो उसके बाद से rapidly होता है. Same is the case with Italy also. I'm not going into too much detail because these two we have to see separately when we discuss unification of Germany and Italy. France also we will discuss in French Revolution. Okay. Next countries are very important: Russia, USA, Japan, and spread to colonies. Japan पर already question आ चुका है UPSC में, so we will see these a little more in detail in next slides. Let us first talk about Japan since UPSC has already asked a question on Japan. जापान की हिस्ट्री में दोस्तों एक बड़ा लैंडमार्क आता है 1870 में, which is called as मेजी रेस्टोरेशन. अब क्या है ये मेजी रेस्टोरेशन? Why is it important? We'll understand with a little bit of context. ठीक है? In the 19th century, Britain, through its opium wars, these were fought in 1840s. Two wars were fought. Through these opium wars, Britain had completely subdued China. China was completely under the domination of Britain, and through Britain, other European powers like Germany, Russia, even USA for that matter, they had virtually carved out their own spheres of influence in China. चाइनीज रूल, चाइनीज एम्परर का रूल बस नाम मात्र, जैसे मुगल्स का रूल था ब्रिटिश टाइम्स में, उसी तरीके से रह गया था, और अलग अलग एरियाज में यूरोपियंस जो है वो चाइनीज को एक्सप्लॉइट कर रहे थे. चाइना की रिसोर्सेज को जो है वो दे वर मिल्किंग इट अवे टू देयर कंट्रीज. ऑल ऑफ दिस वाज बीइंग सीन नेक्स्ट डोर्स बाय जापान. The Japanese people realized well in time that if they don't change themselves, then अगला नंबर जापान का है. जो चाइना के साथ में हो रहा है, that is what is going to happen with Japan. So this led to a tremendous internal consternation within the Japanese as to what should they do. There were two thoughts over there. एक older school of thought था which wanted to continue the traditional feudal way of life. जापान के अंदर में there was something called as the shogun system. The shogun was like, to make you understand, he was like the Peshwa. All power was concentrated in the hands of this shogun, and the emperor was virtually kind of a puppet. Okay? Below the shogun were the samurais. These samurais were feudal lords, like in Europe you had. They had access to land assignments, and these were people who were warriors. They used to fight for the shogun. They used to collect the revenue from the peasants below. इसके नीचे peasants हैं. And this kind of exploitative feudal system was existing in Japan, much like what was there in Europe in medieval times. Okay? So older school wanted this to continue, and the newer school wanted that we should replace this and we should go for modernization, ending all of this. Okay? So finally, in 1870, this entire old system was abolished. The Japanese realized that they cannot fight the modern imperial powers with this old system. Howsoever patriotic, loyal, brave, self-sacrificing they might be, they can fight a modern army based on values and virtues. So you have to transform your society, economy, polity, etc. And this transformation is known as the Meiji Restoration in 1870. The Japanese took a conscious decision to break from the old and start a new chapter in their national life. The reason was they wanted to resist the Western imperialism. They did not want to face the same consequences as China was facing. Okay, so this ended the feudal era of Japan. The samurai class was abolished. Okay, this is a great example, guys, of national consciousness. All of these feudal lords, they came and they surrendered their all rights. From that point on, they will be like common citizens. It's not happened anywhere in the world to the best of my knowledge. They came and they surrendered all their rights and privileges for the sake of national interest to protect their country against foreign invasion. Okay, and this started a slew of reforms. Land was reformed. Samurais के पास से land लेके feudal ठाकुर साहब type people उनके पास से जमीनें लेकर के redistribute की गई. जापान जो है वो modernization की तरफ आगे बढ़ता है, and it goes on the same path as West had done, but in a different way. Japan के अंदर में this transformation is a direct transition. Please note this. क्वेश्चन जो यूपीएससी ने पूछा था कि जापान का इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन कैसे डिफरेंट है फ्रॉम द वेस्ट. वेस्ट में फ्यूडलिज्म धीरे 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 कम हुआ था, और फिर वहां से धीरे 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 जो है वो वी वेंट टुवर्ड्स industrial revolution and capitalism, so on and so forth. But in case of Japan, we have a sharp point at which there is a break. At this point of Meiji Restoration, the old system was ended and a new system was inaugurated. So this makes Japan very special. So this is a unique thing about Japan. Second unique thing, different from West. Here the role of the state was very important. State took active step in rapid industrialization. West में क्या हुआ था? It was market driven approach. Market driven approach. ठीक है? Remember, this is Adam Smith का era West में, है ना? Adam Smith, 18th century, he writes his book Wealth of Nations, and then in that he has given the basic idea about the capitalist economy, the laissez-faire state, the state only playing a enabling role, so on and so forth, invisible hand of the market. ये सब कुछ कहा था ना एडम स्मिथ ने, right? 1770s के आसपास में he has given his work. So West is about market driven approach, whereas Japan के केस में the state realized that we have to transform very quickly. या तो चाइना की तरह हमारी हालत भी खराब होने वाली है. We need to change rapidly. and that is why we see state taking very active steps. Okay, government invested in industries, infrastructure, education, and created state owned enterprises. बाद में वो प्राइवेटाइज हुए, लेकिन पहले शुरुआत हुई थी एज स्टेट ओन्ड एंटरप्राइजेस. आपने मित्सुबिशी का नाम सुना होगा. ओके, so that is one, you can say, enterprise that was created by the state but privatized later. So this is again another significant differentiating point as compared to West. Then they adopted Western technology and practices. They did not have time, they had to quickly upscale. अब अपना खुद का रिसर्च करने का वक्त नहीं है. So what did they do? They adopted whatever West had already developed. Okay, they sent students and officials abroad. They sent them to foreign countries and made them study Western science, engineering, and especially military practices. Japanese people were very concerned about defending their homeland. तो West की स्टाइल के अंदर में military developments उन्होंने करवाई. So this is again very unique. Europeans had not done this, sending students, officials abroad. Okay, yes, there were some developments they copied from Britain, but largely फिर अपना अपना develop किया है. But Japan wanted it quick. Okay, so took the ideas, slight modification, and implemented. Collectivist culture and Bushido values of Japan. Collectivist culture means we together as a country are one. The Japanese people have this in them. We as a country, we are one. We have to be together, we have to fight together. That culture, collectivist culture, was there, and that came in very handy. It came in handy here, it came in handy after World War II also. Bushido values. What are these Bushido values? Bushido values basically ये samurai values हैं. Samurai values. Samurai values में क्या आता है? You know, courage, chivalry, love for your country, loyalty, discipline. So there are a set of values which they consider very important. These are collectively called as Bushido values in Japan. So that was ingrained in their psyche. You'll see that, I mean, not to criticize, but generally we'll see in our country that people often have the attitude ke ye mera kaam nahi hai. Why should I bother? Okay, a Japanese person will never have that. Why? Because they feel this is my country. Like you have for your home, this is my home. It has to be clean. I have to maintain it. So they'll have that value for their country also. Unlike in case of many other places, right? So this is part of the Bushido values. This was very unique about the Japanese people, which you'll not see in other places. Military modernization. Japan was not only focusing on industrial development, it was also focusing heavily on military modernization because it was threatened. ऊपर से Russian Empire बढ़ रहा है. Russians wanted to take control of Manchuria, Northeast China, और वहां से वो नीचे नीचे की तरफ आ रहे थे. Russia always wanted access to warm waters. उनके पास ऊपर बड़ी कोस्ट लाइन है, but that remains frozen. ठीक है, बाल्टिक सी के अंदर में भी कोस्ट लाइन है, बट वो भी बहुत हद तक फ्रोजन भी रहती है, एंड इट ऑल्सो हैज राइवल्स ओवर देयर, स्ट्रॉन्ग राइवल्स. ब्लैक सी अगेन ऑटोमन टर्की वहां पर में था, सो वहां से आगे जाना बहुत मुश्किल था. सो देयरफॉर ईस्टर्न एरियाज के अंदर में पैसिफिक का एक्सेस रशियंस वांटेड टू एडवांस. इसीलिए बाद में वॉर भी फाइट करेंगे ये लोग 1904 में, रूसो जैपनीज वॉर. सो दैट्स व्हाई they had focused on military modernization as much as industrial development. This is unique about Japan. Then Japan, ये आज भी इनके लिए relevant है दोस्तों. Resource scarcity. The Japanese people have given great, you can say, management techniques. Six Sigma, Kaizen, Kanban, okay, just in time, the Toyota way. ये सब क्या है? ये मैनेजमेंट प्रणालियां हैं, systems हैं. Why so many management systems developed in Japan? One major reason behind that is resource scarcity. छोटी सी कंट्री है, वो भी आइलैंड्स है, उसमें रिसोर्सेज बहुत लिमिटेड है. तो क्या करना पड़ता है? आपको बहुत एफिशिएंटली अपने रिसोर्स को यूज करना है. इसीलिए देखिए आज एक ट्रेंड चला है मिनिमलिज्म. व्हाट इज दिस मिनिमलिज्म? कि आपकी लाइफ के अंदर में आपको बहुत ज्यादा वस्तु साधन सामग्री की जरूरत नहीं होती है. With very minimal resources you can live a very happy life. You don't need all the clutter around you. So that is a trend that we have, and Japan is leading in that, minimalism. पहले से उनके कल्चर में है वो. So you have to use your resources efficiently. जो भी है उसको efficiently use करो. So this became a part of their culture. Also imperial ambitions became important. अब हमारे पास में तो टेरिटरी नहीं है, हमारे पास तो नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज नहीं है, तो व्हाट डू वी डू? Naturally we'll have to go and wage war with others and take control of their territory. So Korea, you'll see Korea was occupied by Japan from 1910 onwards itself. Taiwan, this was also occupied by Japan. Why did it do it very early? बाद में तो खैर पूरा almost Eastern China सब कुछ ले लेगा वो World War II में 1937 से. But before that also Korea, Taiwan and other places. Why? Because they want resources. They need resources very desperately. Then Zaibatsu system. What is this Zaibatsu system? Japan created large family-owned conglomerates. Conglomerates क्या होती है? एक dominating company है और उसकी फिर बहुत सारी छोटी कंपनी से. टाटा सन्स मेन कंपनी, फैमिली ओन्ड बिजनेस, और उसके नीचे फिर बहुत सारी कंपनी, मोर देन 100 कंपनीज, राइट? सो सिमिलरली हियर ज़ैबात्सु सिस्टम वाज डन. जापान के अंदर में फैमिली ओन्ड कॉन्ग्लोमरेट्स क्रिएट हुई और ये कॉन्ग्लोमरेट्स फिर जापान की इंडस्ट्रियल डेवलपमेंट में बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले करते हैं. सो ये देखिए कितने सारे पॉइंट्स हैं which will help you to answer that question as to how latecomer industrial revolution of Japan was different from the West. These are more than sufficient points. Okay, sure. Let's go ahead. Now, after seeing Japan, next is Russia. Russia politically was very important in Europe, but industrially it was very, very backward. Russia में industrial development नहीं थी. Reason, Russia का climate, harsh, cold climate, Siberia. Country is very huge. Population is very small relatively. And then a lot of areas are, even today it's very difficult to live. You can imagine back then in 18th and 19th century. Feudal society. रशिया की जो सोसाइटी थी वो टोटली फ्यूडल सोसाइटी थी और इसकी वजह से रशिया कुड नॉट एडवांस इकोनॉमिकली. बट 19th सेंचुरी के बीच में आते आते रशिया को रियलाइज हुआ कि यार, स्पेशली 1856 क्रीमियन वॉर में जब ब्रिटेन और फ्रांस ने उसको हराया, तो उस वक्त में रशिया को रियलाइज हुआ दैट वी नीड टू चेंज दिस, एंड देन दे स्टार्टेड टू टेक एफर्ट्स. रेलवेज, कोल की इन्वेस्टमेंट्स बढ़ाई. 1861 में सर्फडम को एबॉलिश किया. सर्फडम हमने डिस्कस किया था लास्ट लेक्चर में. ये जो सर्फ थे वो टाइड थे लैंड को, नाउ दे आर फ्री, सो दे आर नाउ अवेलेबल एज लेबर फॉर इंडस्ट्री. फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स वर इनवाइटेड इन रशिया टू सेट अप इंडस्ट्री, क्योंकि इनके पास में नो हाउ नहीं था, कैपिटल नहीं था. बैंकिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस वर क्रिएटेड, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर वाज लेड आउट, एंड स्लोली रशिया स्टार्टेड टू डेवलप इंडस्ट्रियल prowess. 1890 to 1914 especially, they will start to develop. 1917, very big development takes place in Russia. The communist revolution took place. लेनिन की लीडरशिप में कार्ल मार्क्स के विचार पर आधारित एक बड़ी क्रांति रशिया में हुई, और इस क्रांति के बाद में खास तौर पे इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन पर बहुत फोकस किया गया, क्योंकि सारा जो कार्ल मार्क्स का थॉट था, लेनिन का थॉट था, वो लेबर और इंडस्ट्री के ऊपर में बेस्ड था. Lenin wanted to export this revolution to other parts of the world, और उसके लिए रशिया को, यूएसएसआर को खास तौर पे, मतलब पूरा कलेक्टिव सारे रिपब्लिक्स मिला करके, they had to be industrially very strong. So you will see that industrialization will peak after the communist revolution in Russia. So these are few points about Russia. Now USA and industrial revolution. USA, United States of America, was born on 4th of July 1776. इंडिपेंडेंस मिलने के बाद ही इमीडिएटली यूएसए ने इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन को बूस्ट देना स्टार्ट किया. यूएसए के पास वो सारे नेचुरल फैक्टर्स थे जो इंग्लैंड के पास थे, जो हमने डिस्कस किए थे. आइसोलेशन फ्रॉम इंटरनेशनल प्रॉब्लम्स, कोल, आयरन, ह्यूमन रिसोर्स, लिबरल वैल्यूज, गवर्नमेंट सपोर्ट, एवरीथिंग यूएसए हैड. ठीक है. इंडिपेंडेंस मिलने के बाद में, इनफैक्ट इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन वाज अ मेजर reason why USA or the colonies wanted independence. ब्रिटेन नहीं चाहता था कि अमेरिका इंडस्ट्रियलाइज हो, क्योंकि अगर वहां इंडस्ट्री हो गई तो ब्रिटेन के प्रोडक्ट्स कौन खरीदेगा। इसलिए वो चाह रहे थे कि ये बैकवर्ड ही रहे, रॉ मटेरियल बस प्रोवाइड करे और हमारे गुड्स खरीदे। यूएसए डिड नॉट वांट दैट, इट वांटेड इंडस्ट्री ऑफ इट्स ओन। इंडिपेंडेंस के बाद दिस स्टार्ट्स। नॉर्थ और साउथ जो रीजन्स थी, नॉर्दर्न कॉलोनीज दे वर मोर इंडस्ट्रियलाइज्ड एंड सदर्न वर मोर एग्रारियन। दिस वाज लाइक अ कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री नेचर बिटवीन द टू। साउथ से रॉ मटेरियल आता था, नॉर्थ से फिनिश्ड गुड्स आते थे, एंड इट वाज लाइक अ हैप्पी काइंड ऑफ अ रिलेशनशिप ओवर देयर। अमेरिकन कॉटन वाज इन ग्रेट डिमांड। यूरोप के अंदर में भी बहुत डिमांड थी और अपने खुद की टेक्सटाइल के लिए भी इट वाज वेरी यूजफुल। अमेरिका में भी काफी सारी डेवलपमेंट्स हुई रिगार्डिंग इंडस्ट्री। हमने एली विटनी के बारे में पढ़ा था। एली विटनी जिनिंग की जो प्रोसेस थी, सो दैट इंडस्ट्री दैट वाज डन इन यूएसए। वॉल्थम सिस्टम, वॉल्थम सिस्टम दिस इज अ प्लेस एक्चुअली इन यूएसए। वॉल्थम नाम की जगह थी और यहां पर में एक ही मशीन के ऊपर में स्पिनिंग, वीविंग, डाइंग, प्रिंटिंग, ये सभी कुछ एक ही जगह पर एक ही मशीन पर लेने का सिस्टम यहां पर में डेवलप हुआ, विच इज कॉल्ड एज वॉल्थम सिस्टम। सो दिस वाज आल्सो अ मेजर स्टेप इन इंक्रीजिंग द एफिशिएंसी ऑफ इंडस्ट्री। वॉल्थम सिस्टम सक्सीडेड वेरी वेल। यूरोप में व्हेन नेपोलियनिक वॉर्स वर टेकिंग प्लेस, नेपोलियन कुड नॉट कम एंड फाइट ब्रिटेन डायरेक्टली। तो नेपोलियन ने क्या किया, नेपोलियन ने यूरोप का ट्रेड बंद कर दिया फॉर ब्रिटेन। दैट वाज कॉल्ड एज कॉन्टिनेंटल सिस्टम, कॉन्टिनेंटल सिस्टम ऑफ नेपोलियन। यानी यूरोप का कॉन्टिनेंट विल बी क्लोज्ड फॉर ब्रिटेन फॉर ट्रेड, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दिस अमेरिकन एक्सपोर्ट और शिपिंग को बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली। नेपोलियनिक वॉर्स जब चली हैं तो उस वक्त में ब्रिटेन नहीं ट्रेड कर पा रहा था, तो इसका फायदा यूएसए को होता है। यूएसए वाज एबल टू यूज दिस फॉर इट्स एक्सपोर्ट एंड शिपिंग। Sewing machine was developed in USA, again a major development for textile. यूएसए में सिविल वॉर के बाद में नॉर्थ और साउथ का जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट था ये खत्म हुआ, एंड देन यूएसए was free of internal disturbance once and for all, and it could now focus fully on its industrial development. और हम 1865 के बाद में देखेंगे कि rapidly USA is going to develop its industrial base. ये जो ईयर है दोस्तों 1870, एग्जैक्ट एक सेम ईयर नहीं बट दैट पीरियड। 1870 जर्मनी का यूनिफिकेशन और वहां से उसका इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन, इटली का यूनिफिकेशन एंड इट्स इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन। 1870 में फ्रांस बिकेम अ रिपब्लिक। 1865 में सिविल वॉर खत्म हो गया अराउंड दैट टाइम ओनली, सो दैट इज अगेन अ मेजर डेवलपमेंट ओवर देयर। 1867 ब्रिटेन की पॉलिटी में भी मेजर चेंजेस आते हैं। सो दिस इज अ वेरी लैंडमार्क पीरियड। एक साल मत समझिए उसको, दैट पीरियड ऑफ 1865 to 1870, it's a very important period in world history, after which a lot of countries went through massive change. Japan, we saw Meiji restoration. Japan is going to change. Russia is going to change. So all of this contributed towards more industrialization spreading across the world. Right? यूएसए में बड़े कॉर्पोरेशंस डेवलप हुई टू कैरी आउट बिजनेस, स्टॉक एक्सचेंजेस बनाई गई, इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट बड़े बड़े यूएसए में बने जैसे एंड्रू कार्नेगी। वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी ऑफ दिस गाय। एंड्रू कार्नेगी was a child labor in a steel factory. His parents had migrated from somewhere in Scotland somewhere, and he went on to become the richest man in the world at that point. कहते हैं कि आज अगर उसकी wealth, if it is computed with time value today, he can easily, consume the wealth of top 2-3 billionaires of today very easily. That's how rich he was, and starting from a child labor. He has left a lot of money for different type of trust. Andrew Carnegie Foundation बहुत अच्छा काम करती है दुनिया में. There's Rockefeller also. He was into rock oil, kerosene, and his foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, is very well known across the world, especially in USA. So he has also done a lot of philanthropy. Examples पता होने चाहिए, ऐसे में काम आती है हमको. Andrew Carnegie, Rockefeller, etc. ठीक है. Innovators. USA saw the birth of many great innovators: Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, Benjamin Franklin, Nikola Tesla. Okay, so all such great people were born or they lived in USA around this time, and that also helped in USA's industrial revolution. Now, colonies and their industrialization. Colonies were used for supply of raw material basically. When Europe was going through industrial revolution, they needed constant supply of raw material. So India, Americas, Africa, they were just used for supply of cotton, sugar, indigo, rubber at cheap rate. And apart from this, market. So ये दो factors we must always remember: supplier of raw material and markets. Okay? Captive markets ensuring steady demand. Whatever is being produced there, whatever is being produced in the mother country, it's also called as metropole. जो यूरोपियन कंट्री होती थी, जैसे ब्रिटेन है हमारे लिए, it was called as metropole. तो मेट्रोपोल का प्रोडक्ट वो यहां इंडिया के मार्केट में बिकेगा. कैपिटल एक्यूमुलेशन, जो भी भारत से एक्सप्लॉइट किया, whatever was being exploited from Indian resources, that wealth went where? Went to the metropole. And that wealth then became the capital for Europe's industrial revolution that was invested in their industrial revolution. Colonies also provided labor industries के लिए, प्लांटेशन इकोनॉमीज के लिए. आप देखेंगे 1833 के बाद में, 1833 ब्रिटेन ने स्लेवरी को अबॉलिश किया in Britain, and because of this they faced a lot of problem with plantation की problem face करने लगे. क्यों plantation की problem face करने लगे? Reason behind that was that earlier slave labor was used for that. Now that slave labor was not available, so 1833 के बाद में they sent people from India to this plantation economies. चाहे वो वेस्ट इंडीज के अंदर में हो, पीजी में हो, मॉरिशियस, all of these spaces. Have you ever wondered why there are so many cricketers in West Indies who have Indian sounding names? Shivnarayan Chandra Paul, okay, and many others actually. I'm not very familiar with the very latest ones, but there are so many cricketers who have Indian sounding names over there. In fact, Mauritius के Prime Minister and such other high dignitaries also are of Indian origin. I don't remember if the exact immediate one, but then there have been such people in the past. So who are these people? They are people who went from Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, okay, all of these eastern parts of our country as plantation workers. They were sent there on contracts, fraudulently sent over there, cheated, and those people continued there. Okay. Infrastructure. One positive thing, partially positive we should say, that came out of industrial revolution is railway, ports, telegraph lines were developed in colonies. You will see especially in the times of Lord Dalhousie, 1850s, big boost was given to these things in India. But it was not for India's benefit. It was basically there only for Britain's trade benefit. But nevertheless, an indirect benefit accrued to colonies because of this. Next is economic subjugation, and this is very important. Britain treated the economy of its colonies in a subjugated manner. They were only to be providers of raw material and totally dependent on the economy of mother country or the metropole. And because of this, the economy of these areas, the colonies, never developed and prospered. They were dependent only on export of raw materials. At least in case of India, we were little more fortunate. We did have some diversification and we had visionary leadership. But a lot of African countries, they were completely dependent on single export. Cocoa or sugar, something like that. And because of that, they were after independence, after decolonization, their economies were in a big soup because of that. Introduction of Western education, values and ideas. In some way, this is positive. Modern science, education, all of these things were introduced, but it had a negative effect also because it eroded traditional values, social structures as well. So some positives in this sense, but a lot of negatives also. So these are the factors that we can talk about regarding colonies and industrial revolution. अब बात करते हैं इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन एंड इंपीरियलिज्म की. Imperialism was enabled by industrial revolution, and at the same time industrial revolution, I mean, it was a two-way relationship, one helping the other. Imperialism was helped by industrial revolution and industrial revolution was helped by imperialism. How did it happen? Raw material and access to market. इंपीरियलिज्म की वजह से रॉ मटेरियल और मार्केट इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन को मिल रहा था, और इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन की वजह से इंपीरियलिज्म करने का मोटिव इंसेंटिव क्रिएट हो रहा था. सो इट्स लाइक अ vicious cycle, both of them strengthening each other. Industrial revolution also gave the power to take and maintain the colonies. इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन की वजह से शिपिंग डेवलप होती है, इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन की वजह से वेपनरी डेवलप हुई, मिलिट्री प्रैक्टिसेस इंप्रूव हुई. इट गेव द कॉलोनियल पावर्स द फायर पावर दैट दे नीडेड टू डिफेंड अगेंस्ट द लोकल्स. Okay, there's a very famous line in a book called as Leopold's Ghost. Leopold's Ghost. ये बुक जो है वो कॉन्गो की हिस्ट्री पर है. बेल्जियम का जो राजा था, he treated Congo as his personal, you can say, property. Not even his country's. It was like his personal, property. And based on the history of what has happened over there, a book was written called as Leopold's Ghost. And in that book, there's a poem, और उस poem की एक आखिरी line है, whatever happens, and the line goes like this: whatever happens, we have the Maxim gun and they don't have it. We have the Maxim gun and they don't have it. Means what? The African people are brave, self-sacrificing, they are strong people, but then they did not have the firepower that Europeans had. ये फायर पावर क्यों आया? Because of industrial revolution. Okay, in 1857, when the Indian fighters were being hanged, one of the Indian fighter rebel, he said that we are not being hanged by the rope, we are being hanged by that telegraph line. ये बिपिन चंद्रा में लिखा हुआ है. Means what? That advancement of technology, the telegraph line, gave the British people a decisive advantage in the revolt of 1857. So IR, industrial revolution, gave them the power to take and maintain colonies. So much so that दुनिया का 84% land surface area, this was under European control or domination. Can you imagine that? Just 7 odd European powers, they were controlling 84% of world's land surface area. British people, they had come to India from 20,000 nautical miles away. 20,000 nautical miles. And they were dominating a whole subcontinent. पूरे ब्रिटेन का population was less than 5% of India's population. Less than 5%. पूरे ब्रिटेन का, we are not even talking about the white people here in India. We're talking about whole of Britain. Yet they were able to dominate. This ultimately, gave a fillip to nationalism and prestige associated with imperial possession. यूरोप के अंदर में उस कंट्री की सबसे ज्यादा इज्जत थी जो जितनी ज्यादा कॉलोनी को कंट्रोल करता था. ब्रिटेन वॉज वेरी स्मॉल, बट इट्स एम्पायर वॉज मैसिव, ह्यूज. एंड फॉर दैट रीजन ब्रिटेन वॉज द मोस्ट प्रेस्टिजियस अमंग्स दीज इंपीरियल पावर्स. एंड दिस नेचुरली लेड टू व्हाट? This naturally led to competition and envy amongst the Europeans themselves. Germany did not want to be second fiddle. Germany felt that we are more intelligent, we are brave, we are strong. Why should we be less powerful than Britain? Why should even Spain have more territory than us? So Germany also wanted more and more land for itself. This led to competition and envy. This competition envy led to secret military alliances amongst Europeans. Britain and France, जो कभी एक साथ में नहीं आए थे for any considerable period, they came together against Germany, Italy, and other players. Secret military alliances were signed. Arms race, each of them wanted to have more weapons than the other, more powerful, more deadly weapons, so that they could fight each other. And this ultimately led to World War I finally. ये सब की शुरुआत कहाँ है? कहीं ना कहीं वो इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन तक चली जाती है. So I hope you understood this entire context, guys. Okay. Now, lastly, we will see the consequences of industrial revolution. Let us first talk about the economic consequences of industrial revolution. First and foremost, of course, it made these European countries richer. You know, when the officials of East India Company came to the Mughal Darbar for the first time, Jahangir was ruling at that time, and it was Hawkins who had come. So Hawkins, when he came to the Mughal Darbar, the attitude of the Mughals was such that, these are jungly people who have come to our court. They don't have anything to offer us. We are people who are civilized. We are people who are cultured. We are people who are more advanced. Same was the attitude of the Chinese people. In fact, the Chinese used to tell that we don't even want anything from you. You just come to our port of Canton. Only one port will be accessible. And whatever you want to buy, you buy and just get lost from here. That was the arrogance that Chinese had against the Europeans. Getting it? From that point to the point where they colonize and subjugate India, they, literally drain away the resources of China. All of that is because of industrial revolution. It made these countries super duper rich, and that's why they are still dominant in the world today. It gave a boost to imperialism. We have seen and understood this, why and how. Positively, it also created jobs. Factories required people to work. Also, it created jobs for women. Women earlier did not have opportunity to go outside of their home. Industrial revolution, yes, initially very exploitative jobs, but over the centuries, it led to more empowerment of women also. It created banks and other financial institutions. I told you in last lecture, 600 banks were there in Britain around 1857. Concentration of wealth. The entire system of capitalism is based on the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. लेसे फेयर स्टेट, मतलब वो स्टेट जो इंटरफियर नहीं करता है मार्केट में, ये कैपिटलिज्म का जो है प्रिंसिपल है. Initially, Britain and USA were completely focused on that. Without state intervention, there was concentration of wealth in the hands of few. Poor became poorer. It also helped to develop agriculture, better tools, implement better technology. Urbanization, with more and more factories, cities started to spring up. You see, in case of India, Jamshedpur is a great example. Why has Jamshedpur come up? It is because of, the industry that was set up over there by the Tatas. Production went up, prices also came down. So these can be some of the economic consequences. Now let us talk about some political consequences of industrial revolution. In political consequences, it gave rise to a capitalist lobby. Lobby is what? It's a pressure group that works for the interest of a particular segment of people or profession or some other kind of occupation. Industrialists or the capitalists, they created a lobby and they exerted pressure on the government so that their you can say, interests were always prioritized. Laws were now not passed in the interest of common people, but in the interest of capitalists. Slowly, the industrialists started to enter the parliament itself. Earlier, they were outside and only trying to influence, but with passage of time, they also gained access to electoral process and they entered electoral fray and joined the parliament also. Reform Act of 1832 was passed. Furthering of democracy took place because of this. 1832 का जो एक्ट है दोस्तों, इसने वोटिंग राइट जो है वो एक्सटेंड कर दिया टू 20% of the people. Earlier voting rights were very limited, some 6% only, but because of pressure from the capitalist lobby, more people were included in those who had right to vote. Of course, the benefit went only to the rich and the capitalist class, but at least the voting rights increased, democracy was furthered. This is the Reform Act of 1832 in Britain. Tensions with other countries. Each country was producing a lot of different types of goods and wanted to export it to others, but in return did not want to import. उस जमाने में एक थॉट था कि दुनिया की जो वेल्थ है वो फाइनाइट है. मान लीजिए कि वर्ल्ड में वेल्थ जो है वो 100 रुपीज है, ठीक है, टोटल वेल्थ. अब ये 100 रुपीज डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड है इन डिफरेंट कंट्रीज. मान लीजिए एक्स कंट्री के पास में, सपोज एक्स कंट्री हैज 10 रुपीज and Y country has 2 rupees. Okay. When X and Y will trade, their respective wealth will get distributed. The more Y exports to X and the less it imports, the more wealth will move from X to Y. This was the idea at that time. It was the wrong idea, but it was prevalent. It was dominant. Basically, what this idea said was that you must maximize your exports but minimize your imports. Otherwise, your wealth will go to somebody else. This led to competition and tension between countries. इसके रिजल्ट में they started to raise tariff walls. दूसरे कंट्री के प्रोडक्ट्स पे टैरिफ लगाएंगे. जैसे इंडिया का जब प्रोडक्ट जाता था तो ब्रिटेन, तो उस पे 400% तक भी टैरिफ लगता था. ठीक है, 400% तक टैरिफ. 1 second. So Indian goods were charged around 400% of tariff, whereas when British goods they came to India, they were charged only 2% to 7%. What is this called? This is called as protectionism. Okay? Something that Donald Trump had done in his previous his tenure as the president. A rivalry started between different countries. Each country wanted to have more and more land, more and more territory, and this led to conflict between the two. Why they want land? Because they want market, they want raw materials. This led to rivalry between countries. This rivalry led to arms race and ultimately World War I, as we just saw. Okay. Very importantly, labor laws were passed. Initially in the Industrial Revolution, when people from rural areas came to cities in search of work, they were completely at the mercy of the factory owners. They had to work as many as 18 hours every day. There was no weekly holiday. Working conditions were extremely poor. They did not have any family time, nothing. The wages were very low. They did not even get them on time. There was rampant exploitation of labor. The state was laissez-faire state. We will not interfere. It is market forces. Let the market decide. This was the idea. But slowly, movement started. Left-leaning individuals, they started movement. We are going to see that soon. And because of these different movements, many different laws were passed, starting with Britain. Labor laws were passed which curtailed or controlled this exploitation. So labor laws have a history going back to Industrial Revolution and towards the close of 19th century. In India also, you'll see 1881 and 1891 Factory Acts were passed in India. This is also a reflection of what was happening in Europe at that time, in Britain particularly. Lastly, socio-cultural consequences. सोसाइटी इस पीरियड में डिवाइड हो गई दोस्तों दो मेजर क्लास में, वर्ग जिसको कहते हैं क्लास. फर्स्ट वाज कैपिटलिस्ट क्लास एंड सेकंड वाज लेबर क्लास. बाकी सोशल आइडेंटिटीज इमटेरियल हो गई. समाज दो हिस्सों में बढ़ गया. इस डिवीजन की वजह से क्लास कॉन्शियसनेस क्रिएट हुआ. देखिए, जो मजदूर है, कामगार जो है, ये वेल्श हो सकता है, इंग्लिश हो सकता है, वो स्कॉटिश हो सकता है, आयरिश हो सकता है. यानी इसकी ये डिफरेंट, आप ये कहें कि रीजनल रेशियल आइडेंटिटी है. इसके बावजूद एज अ लेबर, चाहे वो जो भी हो, वेल्श हो, स्कॉट हो, उसका शोषण ही होना है. वो प्रोटेस्टेंट हो सकता है, वो कैथलिक हो सकता है, वो क्रिश्चियन ही नहीं, वो ज्यू भी हो सकता है, बट स्टिल ही विल बी एक्सप्लॉइटेड. सो रिलीजन ऑल्सो डिड नॉट मैटर. Race did not matter. Region did not matter. Language did not matter. The only thing that mattered was that you are a laborer. So the labor realized that the most important identity that we have is that of our class. That is labor. What is meant by class? It is the segregation of society based on economic criteria. Okay? Labor डेवलप्ड क्लास कॉन्शियसनेस. यानी लेबर होने के नाते, ऑन अकाउंट ऑफ बीइंग लेबर, वी आर वन. वी हैव द सेम चैलेंजेस, वी हैव द सेम प्रॉब्लम्स, वी हैव द सेम काइंड ऑफ ड्रीम्स, होप्स एंड एस्पिरेशंस. सो सिंस वी आर वन, that oneness, that consciousness was created, and out of this consciousness was born trade unionism. Trade unionism. ट्रेड यूनियनिज्म की शुरुआत होती है बिकॉज ऑफ इट. सो ट्रेड यूनियनिज्म में वर्कर्स केम टुगेदर टू फाइट फॉर देयर राइट्स. अनलेस वी फाइट फॉर आवर राइट्स, वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू गेट व्हाट वी नीड, व्हाट वी वांट. ट्रेड यूनियनिज्म क्रिएट हुआ. ठीक है. साथ ही क्रिएट होती है नई आइडियोलॉजीज, विचारधाराएं, न्यू आइडियोलॉजीज, सोशलिज्म और कम्युनिज्म, विच ट्राई टू एड्रेस द प्रॉब्लम ऑफ कैपिटलिज्म. ये सारा जो शोषण हो रहा है लेबर का, ये क्यों हो रहा है? इट इज हैपनिंग बिकॉज ऑफ दिस आइडिया. एंड अनलेस दिस आइडिया इज रिप्लेस्ड बाय अनदर आइडिया, this is going to continue. We human beings, we are, a species who is based on certain ideas, unlike other species. In every age, we've had some ideas that have dominated our thought. And based on those ideas, we act. Industrial Revolution period mein capitalism was the dominant idea. And therefore, there was a need to replace it with a new idea. So this gave birth to socialism and communism. We are going to discuss it in detail as a separate chapter. I'm not going into it right now. Okay? Out of these new ideas, there arose a conflict. See, everything is connected. Society divided into two classes, capitalist, labor. This is exploiting this. Therefore, creation of class consciousness. Class consciousness की वजह से आया एकजुट होकर लड़ने का फैसला, ट्रेड यूनियनिज्म. आउट ऑफ दिस वर बॉर्न न्यू आइडियाज कि ऐसे लड़के सिर्फ नहीं चलेगा, वी नीड टू रिप्लेस दिस आइडिया. फ्रॉम इट वर बॉर्न सोशलिज्म एंड कम्युनिज्म. कम्युनिज्म ने क्या कहा? कम्युनिज्म ने कहा कि ये, if you want to change your situation, then you'll have to fight. The capitalist is not going to give up on his goal of profit maximization. This entire system is set up against you. So you have to change the system. And system cannot be changed without fighting. So conflict. Conflicts की शुरुआत होती है. ठीक है? Workers back then were living in wretched condition. Men, women, and children. Children as young as 6 years old were working 14 hours a day, no holiday, no school. Children were very valuable because they were easy to discipline. Dara ke, maar ke, dhamka ke, you could get work done out of them. You had to machines जिसके अंदर जाना होता था. Children could go there. They have small fingers, so they can work with small parts. Children were exploited in a very, very woeful manner. Disease, malnutrition, crime, ये सब कुछ बढ़ रहा था. Working conditions के ऊपर कोई control नहीं था. These workers, they did not have any housing. They were living in slums. Factory के आसपास में ही झुग्गी झोपड़ियां बनी हुई हैं. They are working 15 hours, 14 hours. They don't have any time. They can't travel long distance. वहीं पर झुग्गी झोपड़ी में they are in slums. They are living. Family as a unit completely broke down. Entire family is going to factory. They don't have time to spend. No time to talk. No time to share their joys, their concerns. Everybody is just a machine, human machine, to earn wage. That's it. This was the kind of condition that was there. Naturally, जब family नहीं होती है, institution नहीं होता है, कोई sharing नहीं होती है, caring नहीं होती है, what happens? Immorality, addictions were on the rise. Crime was rampant everywhere. People were addicted to different types of substances. So this was a very despicable condition in those times. वो जो question देखा था हमने, what was the condition of society? This is what we are supposed to write. I hope you got it, guys. Consequences for colonies. We have seen that, but very briefly. Exploitation of resources. Natural resources were being drained away. Capital was being taken away from the colonies. Economy of colonies were subjugated to that of mother country. Raw material दो and market access provide करो. That was the only thing that you were supposed to do. Wars, famines, and destructions were routine. In India, 12 major and 40 minor famines took place in British period. 12 major and 40 minor famines. New technology was introduced. Education, we've seen that modern education was brought about. Modern means of transport and communication also came. But all of this was geared up for the colonial rule, not so much for the benefit of the colonial people who were natives. It was for the colonists. Okay, so these were the impact for the colonies. With this, our discussion on the topic of industrial revolution comes to a close over here. In our next lecture, we are going to discuss a very important topic, which is the American Revolution. I'll see you in that class, dear students. Take care.